So yesterday there was almost too much to keep up with. Tulsi Gabbard, people. We're going to pull up a couple of highlights here. And by highlights, it'll be like, the segments where they were talking. I'm conducting an orchestra of my own bullshit. Tulsi Gabbard, let's watch Mark Kelly. Tulsi Gabbard, eloquent and more informed than the people asking her the questions. That's the amazing thing. All three candidates yesterday demonstrated the degree to which they are smarter, more informed than the people asking them questions. Let's watch through this one and pause and commentate.
Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Gabbard, when Russia was denying us use of chemical weapons, they accused the U.S. of supporting terrorists. This is a line that Putin used during the Syrian civil war as he supported Assad. Syrian officials made similar comments. They did it repeatedly. They did it in public. They did it at the United Nations. In 2016, you gave an interview in which you said, and this is a quote, "The U.S. is providing direct and indirect support to terrorist groups in order to overthrow the Syrian government."
Understand what they're trying to paint her as is a Syrian Assad apologist or shill. Listen to her destroy this guy.
And in 2019, on the Democratic presidential debate stage, you said of President Trump, this is a quote, "This current president is continuing to betray us. We were supposed to be going after al-Qaeda, but over years now, not only have we not gone after al-Qaeda, our president is supporting al-Qaeda." So I'm interested to hear, what was your goal in saying these things? And did you consider, before saying them, the motives of Iran and Russia, what their motives might have been before making these claims?
Before you repeat something that might be true, because our alleged enemies are also saying things which happen to be true, did you contemplate their motives before you repeating something that they might have said, despite the fact that what you're saying is true? That's the essence of the question. Why are you telling the truth?
Senator, as someone who enlisted in the military specifically because of al-Qaeda's terrorist attack on 9/11 and committing myself and my life to doing what I could to defeat these terrorists, it was shocking and a betrayal to me and every person who was killed on 9/11, their families and my brothers and sisters in uniform. When, as a member of Congress, I learned about President Obama's dual programs that he had begun really to overthrow the regime of Syria, and being willing to, through the CIA's Timber Sycamore program that has now been made public, of working with and arming and equipping al-Qaeda in an effort to overthrow that regime, starting yet another regime change war in the Middle East. DoD Train and Equip program, again, begun under President Obama, is widely been known, looked at, and studied, that ultimately resulted in over $500 million being used to train who they called moderate rebels, but were actually fighters working with and aligned with al-Qaeda's affiliate on the ground in Syria, all to move forward with their regime change and not acknowledging what was obvious at the time and what has unfortunately borne true.
Who's going to replace them?
Which was that a regime change war in Syria, much like the regime change wars in Iraq, the toppling of Gaddafi and Mubarak, while these are all dictators, would likely result in the rise of Islamist extremists like al-Qaeda taking power.
And what's happened in Libya since overthrowing Gaddafi? There's actual human slavery going on in Libya. It's like insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. You go and you overthrow a regime, training its replacement, and then the replacement is, the new boss is worse than the old boss.
I shed no tears for the fall of the Assad regime, but today we have an Islamist extremist who is now in charge of Syria, as I said, who danced on the streets to celebrate the 9/11 attack, who ruled over Idlib with an Islamist extremist governance, and who has already begun to persecute and kill and arrest religious minorities like Christians in Syria.
I understand.
Why that should be acceptable to anyone is beyond me.
It shouldn't be.
Certainly
and
not in our
interest. I
Sir.
appreciate your answer.
By the way, let me just cut you off there because I just got my ass spanked by someone who knows more than me and basically just made me look like an absolute incompetent war whore. Because it's an amazing thing. The new boss is worse than the old boss, so that gives us more to do to replace that new boss when we decide that new boss no longer wants to play ball with us.
And thank you. My concern has to do with the tendency to repeat Russian and Syrian and even in.
But this is a short circuit in this man's small brain. My concern is that the entire truth of what you just said, that Russia says the same thing, so therefore you can't say it anymore. And my concern is you're saying the same. It's true. Everything you just said is true. But Russia also says it. And Putin also drinks water. So my concern is you're sitting there right now drinking a glass of water. My concern is that Putin also drinks water. So that makes you a little too close to Putin.
In some cases, I think we'll get into in the closed session, Iranian information.
Shut your face. You're done, Kelly. You're an idiot. Yeah. My concern is you've basically just revealed the incompetence of 3 decades of American foreign policy, if not more. And my concern, though, is you're telling truths that Putin also is telling. And if people realize that Putin might actually be legitimately criticizing American foreign policy, people might start to question American foreign policy vis-a-vis Putin. We can't have that either. And by the way, if talking over her wasn't the entire point of the day, Bryan Cranston here really didn't want Tulsi to answer a question. Listen to this.
Do you believe, as the chairman of this committee believes, as the vast majority of members of our intelligence agencies believe, that Edward Snowden was a traitor to the United States of America?
Senator, if confirmed
This
as
is when the
Director of
rubber hit
National
the road.
Intelligence,
This is
I will
this
work
is not
with you to make sure
this
that.
is
Look at him.
not
He's
a
angry.
moment for
This is an Elizabeth Warren hissy fit in a man. So it doesn't have quite the same shrill, nasally squeal to it. This is a man who is having a short circuit in his head and is throwing a childish tantrum, cutting off the woman he just asked to answer the question because she's not giving him the answer that he wants. And by the way, the more they demand that you denounce Edward Snowden, the more you can be sure that in their mind, Edward Snowden is a villain, but for very different reasons than what most people might regard him as a villain for. The more that they demand of people to condemn Edward Snowden as a villain, considering that we know these people are the villains, the more you can be certain that Edward Snowden might not be the villain that they're trying to get you to say when they say, say it, I love Big Brother. But it goes on.
It's not a moment to propagate theories, conspiracy theories, or attacks on journalism in the United States.
Attacks on journalism. Buzzwords. Look at his face. Does he remind anybody else of Bryan Cranston from Malcolm in the Middle? Not necessarily from Breaking Bad.
When you need to answer the question.
How about you shut your face and let her?
Votes you're asking for to be confirmed as the chief intelligence officer.
Yell.
Of
that makes you
nation.
right.
As my colleague said, this is not about you. It's about the people that serve the intelligence agency.
This is not about you, says the guy grandstanding and making it all about him.
Of the United States.
Yell louder, Bennett.
Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America? That is not a hard question to answer.
Look at her
when the
face.
stakes are this high.
Sir, I can't believe I have to sit here and put up with this shit from someone who's clearly mentally unhinged. Are you done yet, Cranston?
Senator, as someone who has
your
served
answer,
in
yes
uniform,
or no, is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
When a piece of shit is trying to get you to say something as though it's an unquestionable truth, you can pretty much be relatively certain it's a damn lie. And we're going to get to another example of this in 3 seconds. Or how many seconds? In 14 seconds.
as someone who has worn uniform in combat, I understand how critical our national security
Apparently
is.
you don't. Apparently you don't.
Can you imagine this guy's lecturing her? Hey, Tulsi, say the words, Ed Snowden is a villain. You might want to take a step back as a neutral person and say, maybe Ed Snowden isn't the traitor that they're trying to make him out to be. And for those who think he was a traitor, how do you reveal murder by the government, by the military, the American military? Who do you go to report the murder that your military just carried out? Do you go to the person who just committed the murder? No, of course not. Do you go to the commander who issued the order for the murder? Of course not. Who the hell do you go to blow the whistle on the government? Do you go to the government? Oh, I'm sorry. He risked sources and put people at risk by revealing that the government was engaging in collateral murder of journalists. I'll tell you this. I was more sensitive to the idea that Ed Snowden might have been a villain before that jackass tried to get Tulsi Gabbard to say Edward Snowden is a traitor. And now I'm really not certain anymore. Who the hell do you go to rat out a government that commits murder? Who do you go to rat out war crimes committed by your government? Unfortunately, you have two choices: the government that committed the war crime or the public. And Edward Snowden, at great cost to himself, went to the public. Probably because he, like many others would say, going to the people who perpetrated the crime to rat out the crime and whistleblow on the crime will not get the crime to be exposed or dealt with. It might actually just ensure that Ed Snowden gets Epstein. Yeah, Ed, we want to have a meeting with you in the back seat of your pickup truck outside an Arby's. Oh yeah, that whistleblower for Bombardier. Was it not Bombardier? It was Bombardier. Which was the airplane? Bombardier. The whistleblower in the middle of depositions ends up with a self-inflicted shotgun wound. Who was it? The Clinton one there, who ended up tied to a tree with 2 shotgun blasts and deemed a suicide. Yeah, Ed Snowden, we just want to meet up. We'll meet you. No, not Arby's. Chick-fil-A. You'll get a healthier last meal. That was the highlight from Tulsi. She's amazing.